believed I was aiding my wife in establishing her dream enterprise, her route to autonomy, and materializing her vision. She frequently boasted about robust income, yet simultaneously demanded increasing amounts of money to expand it. Eventually, I reached my breaking point and engaged an auditor. The audit exposed that her cherished business was merely a facade, a conduit to divert my funds towards a secret life she was living apart from me. Initially, the venture appeared legitimate with respectable revenue streams and Diana taking pride in its success. She would share financial reports and discuss successful locations as well as popular collections. I remained supportive and confident in her claims, having no grounds for suspicion. After all, this was my wife, and we had built a life together for years. However, her consistent requests for additional funds raised concerns. More investment, further funding, perpetual capital needs. I initially dismissed these demands. Yet over time, I began to question the authenticity of her business expansion needs. As a fellow entrepreneur, I comprehend the necessity of reinvestment for growth. Thus, I wrote the checks without drawing attention to it. However, there was an unsettling sensation that wouldn't dissipate. The demands never ceased, and the figures seldom aligned as expected. If her claims about the store's success were accurate, why was she continually in need of more funds? I suppressed this doubt on multiple occasions, convincing myself I was overanalyzing. Yet it persisted, subtle yet relentless, much like a hidden issue that one is not ready to confront. One evening, seated at my desk, I decided to scrutinize the business expenses personally. As the proprietor and financier, this was my prerogative, and something within me compelled me to finally take action. I meticulously sifted through the records until I encountered an unexpected expense, a substantial amount for professional barbershop equipment including chairs, clippers, and grooming tools. This was out of place in a clothing chain's accounts. I waited for Diana to return home and inquired about it. Upon viewing the entry, she hesitated momentarily before suggesting it was likely an administrative error, someone else's bill that had been mistakenly included. She promised to address it the next day. Her swift change of topic, however, raised my suspicion. Typically, a mistake is acknowledged, perhaps causing annoyance but promptly dismissed. Diana's immediate discomfort and quick diversion from the subject piqued my curiosity more than the expense itself. After she left the room, I scrutinized our annual expenses more closely. I discovered numerous identical charges scattered throughout various months, each with a slightly varied description. As silence filled the house around me at my desk, I calculated the sum. The figure was substantial. I pondered her dismissive attitude and swift subject change. 17 years of marriage, not once had I harbored doubts about her. Now I was alone in the dark, examining an unfamiliar number that defied logic. No clear explanation presented itself. A week later, I secretly engaged an auditor to scrutinize the store's financial records without informing Diana. Maintaining a normal facade, I returned home at my usual hour, dined, and discussed ordinary matters. She remained oblivious to any changes. Upon receiving the auditor's report, I locked the door and read it in solitude. Hidden within our store finances was a company that had been receiving periodic transfers for years, masquerading as ordinary business expenses. Upon investigating this company myself, I stumbled upon information that left me stunned. It was registered in another city. The individual named as its owner was my wife, and the address associated with the business wasn't an office or a commercial space, but rather a private residence. My wife had never once spoken of owning a company in another city. Throughout all the years I've been supporting her business, during every discussion about growth, expansion, and the store's needs, this particular detail was never disclosed, not even once. I scribbled down the address and sat pondering it for some time. Later, there stood a house linked to my wife's name that I had never known existed, in a city she'd never spoken of, tied to a company that had silently drained my funds for years. The thought lingered about all those times when she approached me seeking more investment. Every time I wrote the check without hesitation, trusting her implicitly. I wasn't prepared to leap to judgments. However, I needed to verify that address personally. I required personal confirmation. I informed Diana I had matters to attend and hit the road. A few hours later, I arrived there. The address on the documents didn't point to an average residence. It was a substantial, expensive property. As I parked, I observed a young man near the garage who wasn't associated with her. At that time, Diana resided in Denver, so whoever he was there independently. I stepped out and approached the neighboring plot where an older man stood by his gate. I initiated casual dialogue, mentioning my interest in local properties and considering the lot adjacent to it. He was amiable and willing to chat. He described the neighbors as a nice couple who had moved in around 2 years prior. The husband operates a chain of men's barbershops in the city under Tyler Brooks Barbershop. His spouse frequently journeys for work-related purposes. I expressed my gratitude to him before heading towards my vehicle. Reflecting on various trips taken by my spouse over time, I considered the professional engagements, business appointments, and the countless justifications I had never doubted. A memory of an invoice for barbershop equipment resurfaced, one that almost convinced me to relinquish it. The property in front of me, owned and financed with funds I had provided, belonged to a man whose identity I was now discovering for the first time. That past invoice was no oversight. My spouse had been secretly nurturing another relationship with another person, using my money for years while I remained oblivious at home, placing absolute trust in them. I drove back to the city and scheduled an appointment at a Tyler Brooks barbershop facility, requesting a meeting with the owner himself. Upon entering, I swiftly identified him, the same person I observed tending to the yard at that residence earlier in the day. Seating myself, I tucked my phone into my jacket pocket, ensuring the recorder was on. Tyler Brooks, as anticipated, embodied his profession's traits: affable, untroubled, and conversational. He effortlessly transitioned into the casual banter characteristic of barbers with new patrons, maintaining a cheerful atmosphere. As he attended to my hair, I initiated discussions, maintaining a relaxed tone about his tenure at his place, the status of his business. His demeanor brightened as he shared his aspirations, progress, impending expansions to new locations. He discussed it with a sense of pride that mirrored a man proud of an accomplishment, allowing him to expound freely. He then meandered to personal matters, boasting about the recently completed house he built outside the city. Now he resided there with his partner and life was flourishing. He remained clueless about who occupied the chair, unaware that the success, the property, the lifestyle he boasted about so gleefully were financed by the man receiving a haircut from him. I settled the bill, thanked him for the service, and stepped out into the parking lot. The recording was in my pocket, everything necessary was at hand. I drove home, possessing all I required, but understood that acting indifferently now would jeopardize all I had striven for. Both the house and the barbershop business were registered under Diana's name. She was astute. If she detected something amiss, she'd react swiftly, transfer everything to Tyler, withdraw any remaining funds, dismantle the entire operation before anyone could intervene. I wasn't going to provide her such an opening. Therefore, that evening, I returned home, enjoyed dinner, and maintained my usual conduct. I revealed nothing through my expressions or tone. She had anticipated something different from me. The following day, I contacted a lawyer and disclosed all the details. The case was clear-cut. The stores were funded by my money, the funds withdrawn from those stores were mine, and anything purchased with those funds belonged to me, irrespective of who the documents stated as owner. My lawyers acted swiftly and discreetly, ensuring all aspects were in order before Diana had any inkling. She had spent 3 years constructing something clandestinely, assuming I would never scrutinize closely. However, she was mistaken about that, and she was on the verge of learning the extent of her error. One morning, Diana phoned me, her voice tense and bewildered. I calmly informed her that I was at home and that she needed to arrive immediately. Then I hung up and sat down to wait. For several weeks, I meticulously planned and executed my strategy, ensuring all pieces were in position without alerting her. The deed was done, leaving only the discussion ahead. I knew her response as she stepped through that door, and mine too. I'd rehearsed it repeatedly, leaving nothing more to prepare but the weight and the silence enveloping the house. An hour later, Diana burst into the house, white-faced, still clutching her phone. "Greg, our store accounts are frozen. I don't understand any of this." "What's happening?" I remained composed, ready for this talk. After all, I knew Diana and had anticipated this conversation. She stood motionless. You might have observed that I'd recently gotten a haircut at Tyler Brooks Barbershop. The color drained from her face, and here is the exchange we had. I activated the recording I made at the barbershop, filling the room with Tyler's voice. He boastfully discussed his expanding empire, mentioning the suburban residence beyond the city limits, the female companion he cohabited with there. Diana listened attentively, her lips quivering. I silenced the recording. I engaged an auditor and scrutinized our assets. For 3 years, you have been transferring my funds. You utilized it to acquire a property, establish a secondary corporation, and open barbershops for your lover. All along, I was providing you money for business expansion. What you were cultivating was a secret life of yours. Unbeknownst to me, she attempted to explain our misunderstandings. Don't, Diana, I asserted sternly. I visited your home, I spoke with your neighbors. I no longer trust you. Diana slumped into a chair. You used everything, I repeated calmly. My faith, my affection, my wealth, you never hesitated to ask for more. You looked me straight in the eye and solicited funds to construct a house meant for your lover. She remained silent, and I continued my reproach. All the documents are now with my lawyers, including the audit report, records of every transfer, and details of your second company, all owned by you but funded with my funds. This morning, the court took control of the house, barbershops, and accounts, preventing any transfer to Tyler. You have lost all authority over these assets. Additionally, I initiated divorce proceedings. The papers are on their way to you. I exited the room after making this statement, leaving the rest to be settled through the courts. My lawyers presented all evidence they had gathered: the audit, the transfers, the company in Diana's name, the house, and the barbershop chain financed with my money. The court ruled in my favor, transferring ownership of the Colorado Springs house and the Tyler Brooks barbershop chain to me. I swiftly placed both properties on the market, expressing no desire for barbershop management or maintaining a house symbolizing what Diana constructed without my knowledge. I sought only the return of my money, which is what transpired. I listed the house and barbershops for sale and succeeded in their disposal. Overseeing someone else's aspirations was never a role I intended to assume. My aim was merely to recover my funds. Diana and I completely severed all connections, though not instantly. She endeavored to reach out to me, to converse, to devise a means of restoring our previous state. She solicited another opportunity, suggesting we could commence anew. Unbeknownst to her, Tyler vanished from her life the instant there was no house, no barbershops, and no cash remaining. He had merely been leveraging her for a comfortable lifestyle, and as soon as that ceased to exist, so did he. Thus, she found herself bereft, recalling me. I listened to her without feeling anything, no animosity, no bitterness, no urge to justify myself or enlighten her. The individual before me was a stranger. I conveyed this to her impartially, devoid of blame, and requested her not to return. The divorce proceedings were swiftly concluded. After that encounter, I never sought out any closure or final conversation. That part of my life was definitively concluded. What did you think about this tale? In my opinion, I found it intriguing how Greg unveiled his wife's dual existence. A single oversight, and the web of deceit she had woven started to crumble before her own eyes. Please share your thoughts in the comments regarding whether you appreciated this revelation and what actions you might have taken if in Greg's position. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more unspoken narratives on the horizon.